Tonight, I'll be narrating Hexagon by Aftermire.
Dude, that's impossible. You've won 5 times in a row. You have to be cheating, Josh said, tossing the cards onto the table with a sour look on his face. The cards just love me, I replied with a grin. So what now? One more round? I asked, finishing off my favorite APA beer. It's 11. I should get going. Don't forget, we've got exams tomorrow. Josh stood up, finishing his bottle too. Josh was a hardworking student, and at the same time, my best friend. We met in college, and we were complete opposites. He loved having everything in order, took studying seriously, and was obsessed with plaid shirts tucked into tight jeans. Me, on the other hand, I was all about taking it easy. Black t-shirt, black joggers, sunglasses, and barely passing exams. The only thing we really had in common was our love of board games, and that was exactly how our friendship started. One time, a professor paired the two of us up for a project. My tiny apartment on Pearl Street would have been way less comfortable for working on it, so we met at his parents' house in Shelburne. Josh had a really cool mom who offered me lemonade right away and asked if I wanted to stay for dinner. In his room, I noticed a shelf packed with all kinds of games, card games, board games, and stuff like that. I had half of them on my own shelf too, and some of them I had never even heard of. We got into a conversation, opened up one of the games, started playing around, and that was how it all began. Dude, the exams aren't going anywhere. Just a few more days and it'll all be over. I said that as I stood up, gathered the empty bottles, and tossed them in the trash. Suddenly, Josh straightened up like he'd been hit by electricity, and I flinched, startled by his sudden reaction. Right, listen, we got so into the game that I forgot to tell you. My uncle Steven has a cabin in the woods, 70 miles outside the city, with a pretty decent piece of land. You can grill there, have a bonfire, swim in the lake, and most importantly, play all kinds of card games and board games in peace. Maybe we can even invite some girls, he said excitedly. Come on, man. Let's get away for a few days and unwind after this brutal exam marathon. I looked at him uncertainly. Uncle Steven? You mean that cabin he rents out during the season? He agreed to let us stay there free for a few days? That guy wouldn't give away sand in the desert for free. Josh stood there quietly for a moment, staring at the floor. Not for free, I sighed. Dude, we're broke college students. We barely have enough money for hot dogs, marshmallows, and alcohol. Maybe if we all chipped in, we could scrape together enough for gas just to get there, so there's no way we can pay Uncle Steven for the cabin. It's not about the money. I made a deal with him. We clean the cabin before the season starts. Alright, I'm in. Sounds fair. 1 hour of cleaning, and then the fun can start. Josh looked at me with an obviously forced smile and wide open eyes. He stood in the doorway and said, as he closed the door behind him, Yeah, man, exactly. It's a deal. I was standing outside the University of Vermont. That had been my last exam. Now, it was finally time for some well-earned rest. I got back to my apartment, dropped onto the couch, and opened a bottle. A nice feeling of relief washed over me. Exams were over, and now I could focus on resting and doing absolutely nothing. Well, except having fun. Still, something was bothering me. The look on Josh's face when he left my place. He was clearly up to something, or at least hiding something. I knew him too well to miss that. The truth was, a cabin in the woods, a lake, grilling, and board games sounded way too good to start picking apart the details. especially since my mom had called a little earlier and told me that because I passed everything, my dad was sending me an extra $300 as a reward. My parents paid for my tuition, my studio apartment near campus, and all my bills. They also gave me money for food, and I usually had a little left over for random little things. But if I wanted anything more, I'd have to get a job, and I was in no hurry to do that. $300. I'm buying myself a new board game. That much was obvious. The only question was, which one? I sat down at my laptop and started looking. Then, suddenly, it hit me. In 2 days, we were heading to Josh's uncle's cabin, and Mia and her friend Chloe had agreed to come with us. Mia was my future wife. She just didn't know it yet. For now, we weren't even together. She was beautiful, feminine, liked my jokes, and most importantly, she liked board games. Josh, on the other hand, was crazy about Chloe. There was just one problem. Whenever he saw her, he couldn't talk to her like a normal person. During our whole time in college, he had maybe exchanged 2 words with her, and only because she had started the conversation a couple times when she asked him about solutions to certain assignments. But this trip was a chance for both of us. A nice atmosphere, beer, a lake, and board games. In an environment like that, even Josh should be able to handle himself. This board game couldn't be just anything. It had to be something really good. Something perfect for this exact occasion. A cabin in the woods. Dark evenings without internet. It had to be horror. A creepy atmosphere. Tension. And yeah, it had to be a game with tasks, so it wouldn't get boring. Girls were naturally pretty skittish, so this was my chance to show off my masculinity and courage. Maybe I'll even manage to set up a little cuddling. Who knows? I said, grinning at my laptop. The first 2 hours were a waste of time. On 99% of the sites, I kept seeing the same titles I'd known for years. Mysterium, Betrayal at the House on the Hill, Arkham Horror. They were good games, some of them even great, but the only thing they might scare was a child. None of them matched the vision I had in mind. I wanted something that would make the girls instinctively move closer and grab an arm. I found a few forums, read dozens of posts, and compared reviews. Still, nothing hit exactly what I was looking for. The games were either too casual or too mechanically complicated. And besides that, most of them were horror in name only, while inside, they were just another Euro game with ghosts instead of workers. 4 hours later, around midnight, my eyes started closing on their own. I told myself I'd check a few more threads on Reddit, and if I still found nothing, I'd just pick something from my own collection. At worst, I talked to Josh tomorrow. He definitely had something good too. I was just about to close my laptop when I saw a fresh post from 1 minute earlier. Hexagon, the scariest card and board game in the world, with physical tasks. I snorted under my breath. The name sounded interesting, but that line, the scariest game in the world, it reeked of cheap nonsense. A horror-themed card and task game with physical challenges. What kind of scary tasks could they have possibly come up with? Going into another room and turning off the light? I laughed to myself. Then I started reading. 6 decks of cards, 6 categories of tasks. The first person to reach the finish wins. The remaining players lose. The die has 6 colors. The game begins with the most fearful player. Turns move clockwise. The most fearful. That would definitely be Mia, I thought. Or at least I hoped so, because I'd be sitting next to her. A player takes the die and rolls it. After landing on one of the 6 colors, they must draw the top card and complete the task. The deck should be sorted by color and shuffled. During the game, they must be kept face down so the players can't see the tasks ahead of time. I kept reading. The rules seem pretty simple. If you complete the task, you move forward. If you don't, you stay where you are. The game has its rules. Read them carefully before starting. After that, it will be too late. Failing tasks from the red and black decks have consequences. Estimated game time, from 3 hours to eternity. I finished reading the description and clicked the link. The site was ridiculously simple. A few product photos, a short description, and basically nothing else. Below that was an order form, a field for your address, phone number, email, and the price, $40. That was a lot for this kind of game, but I hadn't found anything else, so I decided to risk it. The site looked kind of too bare, like a typical scam, but luckily, to my surprise, there was a cash on delivery option. I clicked, entered my address, placed the order. The confirmation came immediately. Estimated delivery time, 2 business days. Damn it, we were leaving in 2 days. If there was any delay at all, the game wouldn't arrive on time. That would mean I'd wasted several good hours at my laptop for nothing. I scrolled all the way down the page looking for the seller's contact information. Just perfect, I muttered to myself, annoyed. There was no company information or contact info. Not on the site, and not in the order confirmation. I closed the laptop and lay down in bed, wondering whether the game would arrive on time, and whether I had overpaid for something that would turn out to be some cheap Chinese card set worth $5. The next morning, the doorbell woke me up. Getting out of bed slowly, I glanced at the clock. 8 in the morning? Who the hell is banging on my door at this hour? I said sleepily. I walked to the door wearing nothing but my sleep shorts. I opened it and... How was that even possible? It was my order. I had placed it after 1 in the morning. I was stunned. A carefully wrapped package sat outside the door, wrapped in brown paper and tied with scarlet string. My address had been written on the paper by hand. No return address. As I stood there staring at it, I realized I had chosen cash on delivery. I shoved my shoes on and ran outside the building. I looked around, but there was no one there. Fine. If they don't want the money, then whatever. I'm not running all over the city looking for a courier, I thought. I went back inside and quickly unpacked the package. Dark, solid, smooth wood. It made a huge impression. I had never seen packaging this sturdy and elegant for any game before, and I owned around 150 of them. The only thing that surprised me was the lack of any manufacturer logo or the game's title on the box. I lifted the lid. 6 decks, each tied with ribbon in its own color: white, blue, green, yellow, red, and black. A die, solid and cube-shaped with colored dots instead of numbers, and a neatly folded black game board with gray spaces. I unfolded it on the table and picked up the die. The path ran in a circle, 60 spaces in total. In the center of the board was a block of text, printed in small letters inside a rectangle, outlined with a thin red border. Game rules. I started reading. 1. Once the game begins, it must be played to the end. Leaving the table, skipping a turn, or abandoning the game means eternal darkness. 2. Cheating is forbidden. Fraud results in immediate disqualification. 3. Physical violence against other players is forbidden. The consequence is immediate elimination. Physical violence? I mean, I get that some games stir up a lot of emotion and people get frustrated during a match, but that felt a little excessive. Then again, even regular Monopoly can tear apart the most loving family, so maybe it made sense after all. 4. Every task must be completed alone unless the card says otherwise. 5. There is only one finish space. The game ends when the first player completes the circle. The remaining players end together with the game. I sat there in silence for a moment. The remaining players end together with the game. I shrugged. Atmospheric. Exactly what I'd been looking for. Someone had clearly put a lot of work into creating the right mood. I folded the board back up, closed the box, and packed it into my backpack. We were leaving tomorrow. I couldn't wait to see Josh's face when he saw this beauty. I was tempted to show it to him that same day, but that would ruin the whole surprise. The next day, Josh picked me up at 10 in his worn-out Ford. Mia and Chloe were already sitting in the back seat. I tossed my backpack into the trunk and got into the car. I heard you beat Josh 5 times in a row, Mia said as I got in. I should probably stay away from you when it comes to games like that. I smiled and said, or maybe you should sit even closer. Mia made an embarrassed face, and I felt heat flood my cheeks. In my head, that had sounded way better. Josh snorted from the driver's seat and started the engine. The drive was going smoothly. We joked around, laughed, talked about exams. We left Burlington heading south on Route 2, past Montpelier, then turned onto smaller roads. About an hour and 15 minutes in, things got a little more complicated. The GPS lost signal at the last intersection with a road sign, and Josh started driving from memory, mumbling something about how he'd been there a few times before and remembered the way. I hope your memory isn't failing you, Chloe muttered, staring out the window at the woods. I've been here 4 times, Josh said under his breath, blushing. I couldn't help it and burst out laughing. Josh turned his head just a little in my direction with a sulky look on his face. After a few wrong turns, one accidental drive onto somebody's property, and scraping the side of the Ford against bushes on a narrow side road, we finally made it there. Uncle Stephen's cabin stood in a clearing about 70 miles from Burlington, deep in the central Vermont woods. Solid, wooden, with a porch. The woods were maybe 30 yards away, and the lake, just like Josh had promised, really was less than 20 steps from the cabin. There were no people around, no other cabins, no houses, nobody. Beautiful place, I said, pulling out my backpack and Mia's suitcase. And completely cut off from the world, Mia said, looking around at the lake. Josh unlocked the door and we went inside. It smelled like old wood and dampness. Chloe started opening all the windows. The cabin looked like a typical rental place. Kitchen, living room with a dining area, and fireplace. 2 bedrooms and a bathroom with a shower. In the middle of the living room stood a large round table with 4 chairs. All right, Josh said, setting his bag down by the door. Before we start having fun, my uncle wanted us to clean up, I finished for him. All right, man, just tell us what needs to be done and let's get it over with. Josh made the exact same face he made back at my apartment. Dude, what is it? How much is there? I asked, irritated. My uncle left a list in the kitchen, Josh said, staring at the floor. The list was hanging on the fridge. pinned under an anchor-shaped magnet, and it had 32 items on it. 1. Wash the windows. 2. Vacuum and mop the floors, including the porch. 3. Clean the bathroom. 4. Mow and rake the yard. 5. Clean the kayaks. Mia looked at the list, then at me, then back at the list. You said 1 hour of cleaning, Mia said, and I had never seen her that pissed before. I took a step back, a little panicked. Josh said that. Dude, you said that, Josh replied, shrugging and still looking sadly at the floor. Then why didn't you correct me? I asked in a hopeless tone. Josh raised his eyes to me. Because I was scared you wouldn't agree, man. Because I wouldn't have, I snapped, pulling a beer out of the crate. So we got to work, doing everything on the list. Well, Josh and I did. The girls got offended, changed into swimsuits, and went to the lake. The only thing they cleaned was a little patch of ground to lay their towels on. 7 hours later, we were finally wrapping up. Josh was scrubbing the bathroom and I was mopping the floors. On the way, I also hauled a pile of old newspapers from the 90s out of the basement. Exhausted, we sat down on the porch with cold beers. So how's it going, boys?
1 hour of cleaning, huh? Chloe asked sarcastically. Josh looked even more miserable than before. That got on my nerves, and just as I was about to answer, Chloe added with a smile.
Just kidding. I'm starving. Are we eating or what? Mia asked. We lit the grill, the sun slowly sank behind the trees, and it started getting darker. We ate hot dogs and corn, finished our first beers, and before it got completely dark, we went inside the cabin. It was getting cold, so Josh lit a fire in the fireplace. It gave the place a great atmosphere. The cabin filled with the crackling sound of burning wood, and warm orange light lit up the whole room, bringing a comfortable heat with it. We sat down at the table, and I pulled out the box. What's that pretty little chest? Chloe asked. It's a horror game I ordered from some weird website. Indie creator, I think. The vibe looks promising. It's called Hexagon. We opened the box together. Mia grabbed the black deck and started untying the ribbon. I unfolded the board. Josh leaned over the rules, shuffling one of the decks while he read. He read in silence for a moment. The remaining players end together with the game, he muttered. Dramatic. It just means the game ends when the first person reaches the finish, I said. So, a classic race, Josh said with an expert look on his face. Rule number 4, Mia read with a theatrical hint of dread in her voice. Every task must be completed alone. I'm already starting to get scared. That's the whole point, I said, nodding. Josh picked up the die and rolled it between his fingers a few times, staring at the colored sides. We did a draw, and each of us got a piece. Dark wooden cylinders with no faces, different only by their bases. Mia had a pentagram, Chloe a trigram, Josh a tetragram, and I had a hexagram. We placed them on the starting space. Who goes first? Mia asked. Maybe the oldest one? Chloe suggested. The most fearful player starts, I said immediately. And how exactly are we supposed to figure that out? Josh asked, looking around at all of us. I've got an idea. Maybe we go outside and take turns walking into the woods, and the one who lasts the shortest starts first? I asked excitedly. That would definitely crank up the atmosphere, and just by itself would already freak the girls out. Josh looked at me like I was an idiot. That's a stupid idea. I'll just start. He grabbed the die and rolled it. Yellow. He reached for a card from the yellow deck and read it out loud. Tell a scary story beginning with the words, "I swear this is true," about the place you are in. End it with the words, "And that is why I will stay here forever." All four of us laughed. Josh cleared his throat, straightened up dramatically, and began. "I swear this is true. This cabin stood here before there was a forest or a lake. No one remembers who built it. My uncle bought the land with the cabin included for practically nothing. We started playing this game, and that is why I will stay here forever." We applauded. "Dude, that cold tone was actually really good. I didn't know you had that kind of acting in you," I said enthusiastically. But Josh just sat there quietly, staring ahead. "Dude, you still with us?" "Yeah, sorry. I zoned out," Josh said, picking up his piece and moving it one space forward. Mia picked up the die and rolled. Blue. The card said, "Take a candle, go into the bathroom or another dark room with a mirror, stand in front of it and say, 'Bloody Mary,' 3 times. After each time you say her name, wait 3 seconds. Come back and describe what you felt, assuming you survive. Of course." "Classic," Mia said in an uncertain tone. She took the candle from the table and went into the bathroom. She closed the door behind her. For a moment, there was silence. Then we heard her voice, slightly muffled by the door. She said, "Bloody Mary," 3 times, loud and clear, almost like she wanted us to hear every word. A moment later, she came back with a faint look of fear on her face. "Nothing showed up," she said, "but those 3 seconds between each time, when you're staring into the mirror, they're actually really creepy." She moved her piece forward. My turn. I rolled the die and got red. Recite from memory the first and last names of 3 people who died in your hometown. Warning: if you fail to do so, those 3 people will become your loved ones. Be honest. The game knows when you lie. I read the task twice. The atmosphere is great and all, but someone went really overboard with this one, I said, scratching my head. The game knows when you lie, Chloe repeated. Whoever made this has a sense of humor, she added quietly. To be completely honest, I don't know the first and last names of 3 people who died in my hometown. Let's move on. Chloe's turn. White deck. Ask the group a secret question you do not want to answer yourself. Some stories end when the words stop. Others don't end at all. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting in the dark. Until next time.